I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
Sorry, we've already started laughing and not because of the subject, well, I guess a little bit, but we're talking about pirates and piracy with your book.
Hey, lady, I'm Gasparella.
And we've already started with the as happens when you talk about pirates. But we're talking about the bad pirates, not the fun Disney kind of pirates. And obviously it's a very serious issue because when people pirate your book, you're not getting the income from it. And we obviously want to earn an income from our book. So we want to talk to you today about piracy, some of the tips that can help you manage piracy. I don't necessarily think we will ever get to the stage where there won't be pirates pirating books. So let's have a look at our 3 tips for today. So first up is the copyright page on your book. So Susan, step us through that one. What's important to put on that? Is there a template we should use? What's all the good stuff that we need to put on that copyright page?
Well, there's definitely basically a template, and you can open up any book anywhere and pretty much copy what's on it and tweak it a little bit to your own. But the biggest thing is make sure that you have it copyrighted, the year with the little symbol and your name and the title of the book that you're copywriting. So that is so vital to have, but it's not the only thing that you have to do. But every book should have that in. And then don't forget to email a copy of your completed document to yourself.
Okay.
This places a time date stamp on your work.
Okay. So make sure the book itself, the digital copy, and obviously your paperback has that copyright page, needs to have the date, your author name, your business name if you are
if you run by a business or if it's under a business, and it's your ebook, your paperback, your audiobook, your photos, that may be original photos, basically anything you do, make sure that you put copyright on it.
Okay. Awesome.
It doesn't hurt to slap it on there and send yourself a copy of it, because you'll keep it in the cloud somewhere. And it's amazing how 4 years later, your one copy end up getting deleted by accident and you're like freaking out. And then it's like, but I emailed it to myself. You do a search in your email and, 5 years ago, you wrote this story, emailed it to yourself, and it pops up and there's the file. And you're like, oh, thank goodness.
Yes. And of course, on top of that is that added security that you've got the time date stamp of when you did email it to you. So even though you've opened it, you haven't kind of violated or done away with the ability to prove that it was your document. That's not going to impact things, because I've often heard people say that you shouldn't open the file that you send to yourself.
I've heard both, that it doesn't really matter, because once you've sent an email, it's got that time date stamp, and unless you delete it, there's no way to go back in and change it. It's going to have that document. It's going to have that time stamp on there. Some people have actually printed out and mailed it, the manuscript to themselves. Me, I think that's a little overkill, but again, you need to do with what you feel comfortable doing. I've copyrighted all of mine. I have a stack about this high of copyright letters, which we're going to be talking about next, as an added security for myself. But I have everything saved to the cloud. I have everything saved to a hard drive, and I have emailed myself a copy of every piece of my work.
Yeah. So you have, and I guess that's the free way to show that you have copyright and that you wrote it and you're the original author. And our second point is actually copywriting your book. So can you step us through that one? That's a paid service. And yeah, the benefit of doing that as opposed to just emailing it to yourself.
And this is where you need to be really, really careful, because you can go directly to copyright.gov and directly to the Copyright Office, register, and copyright your own material yourself. It's very easy. They'll walk you through it. There's a template, and you just basically fill out the squares, the information in the squares. And if you have any questions, they have, a little question mark, and you click on it and it'll answer your questions. So, and once you've gotten one done, you can actually save it as a template, so that when you do your next one, then you just go in and change, the title of the book and the dates and stuff like that. And so it makes it a whole lot easier. And when I originally started doing it, it was $35. And then they went up to $65. And a friend recently told me they went back down to $45. So I'm not sure if it's going to be 45 or 65, but it's going to be one of those. But it's definitely worth going ahead and getting that copyright through the Copyright Office. Now, the reason I want to stress to be very, very careful is there's a lot of companies out there that say, let us do your copyright for you. And then they charge you the big bucks to do something that you can very easily do yourself. And it's easy to click on the wrong thing. So you got to make sure it's copyright.gov and nothing else, because they try to go copyright.com, and you're thinking that you're at the government and doing it, but in fact, you're at a third party that just wants to take extra money for doing something that you could very easily do.
Yes.
So that really irritates me. They try and trick you on things like that. So just be very, very careful, but you can do it yourself, and they do walk you through it.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of going through the copyright, through the government service, is that they will follow up if if you can show that there's been a copyright abuse. Is that one of the benefits of going that way?
That's a big benefit, because what happens is if you just have the copyright through yourself, then you have to prove if someone has stolen your work. And so the responsibility and the weight falls on your shoulders. But if you have the material copyrighted through the Copyright Office and there's an infringement, then the Copyright Office will take up the challenge against the person who stole your work.
Oh, and do they charge for that?
No.
Oh.
This is part of the protection that you purchase by getting your work copyrighted. So it gives a little bit added weight. It's also better when you do go before a judge and you've got two identical manuscripts sitting side by side, and they're saying, oh, I wrote this. And they're trying to say, I read it 5 years before you did. And you're like, well, I have the copyright for it. Yeah. And, you pull out that copyright letter and it shows this is my work. It's been copyrighted through the Copyright Office. So it gives you that added protection also on the legal stance.
Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, we never want the worst case scenario to happen, but I also think it's wise to plan ahead. Could it happen? Potentially, yes. Where you might need to go to court, but certainly piracy happens. Just we see it every day. So even just from that point of view, having the extra protection would be handy.
Well, one of the other things is estate planning. So you've got to remember that your work needs to be copyrighted for, a copyright is valid for a lifetime plus 70 years. So 70 years after you pass, your family or your estate still owns that copyright to that material. And by having this letter of copyright, it proves that this does belong to your family, your estate. So it also gives another cushion that someone can't say, oh, they died, I'm going to go take all their work.
Yes. Yeah. You protect your legacy.
Yes, you protect your legacy.
Yeah, that's a good one. And our third tip is responding to piracy sites. We've had many discussions about this.
What do you think?
And it's like playing whack-a-mole, isn't it, Cynthia? Like you get your stuff taken off one site and there's another site pops up, and so you're there, and then another one and another one. Is it worthwhile paying for service to look for the pirate sites? Is it worthwhile even bothering you yourself going after the pirate sites?
I did for a long time, and I realized it was a never-ending rabbit hole. It's like a black hole that just continuously sucks. It was very expensive to pay each month and to, tell them all these books. They would send me a list saying all of these, potential places, and you would say, well, send them a letter. But as fast as you're sending them out, the more sites are popping up. And that's one of the things I think everyone has realized, is that it's just such an overwhelming avalanche of, like you said, you're constantly, YouTube. I think the one that really, really upsets me is when on YouTube, they've uploaded my entire audiobook. And it cost me thousands of dollars to have an audiobook produced. And to see, all that hard work from not only myself, but the narrator put up there, all that thousands of dollars I've invested, and somebody not even thinking about it uploads the entire book. And it could be, 8 to 10 hours or more worth of audio. And so it's very depressing for an author that, this is my livelihood, and you're watching people take your livelihood away. And they're like, oh, they probably make enough money. Well, how would you feel if they said, oh, you probably make enough money, I'm going to go take your stuff? And, something that you've worked months on and spent thousands of dollars on. And, so put yourself in that author or that artist place. Piracy does hurt. And when I don't make as much, not only does it hurt me, but it hurts anybody that I hire to help me, like the narrator, or, my virtual assistant who's young and, has a family, and, my marketing and my, so it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Where it's not only taking money away from what I've worked so hard at, but, other families as well. So it's one of those things that I always tell people, think before you take. The audiobooks are not that expensive, and you can have them like when I purchase a movie. I can enjoy that movie over and over and over and over. When I buy that ebook, it's there for me and I can watch it over and over. Another thing is that when you download an ebook from some of these pirate sites, you are opening yourself wide open to viruses,
Yeah.
So you can almost guarantee that your machine has been infected. And the last thing you want is ransomware, because they'll freeze you out of everything. And most people don't think about backing up or, having, their material, their finances and everything else safe, and it's gone, but you're opening yourself up to that. So, it not only hurts then me, but it hurts the reader who's gone to these pirated sites. And luckily, most of the time, I have some awesome readers, thank you, that point out to me, hey, here are the sites that we found, because I don't have time. If I sat down every day and tried to search for these pirated sites for my pirated material, that's all I would do. I would never get any other work done, literally. And it would be mountains. And it would just put me in such a funk, then I couldn't even write if I did have time. So the readers and listeners have been fantastic about, if they see my work out there, a lot of times they'll email me and say, here's the link. This is where we found your books. And then I do it. YouTube is pretty good. It's very time consuming for an author, but YouTube is very good. If I send a DMCA notice to them, they will take it down. A lot of the pirated ebook sites, they're supposed to have the DMCA, but they don't. And you'll find that they're offshore usually. They're not based in the United States, because the United States has a pretty good laws about piracy, and they will enforce it. If you don't believe me, try downloading a bunch of Disney material without permission. I guarantee you within a week, you'll have a nice letter from their lawyer. And the only reason I can say that with all honesty is because I worked in a school system, and they would proactively send schools a nice letter to the media specialist stating, if you show any of our movies, this is what we're going to do to you. And they will. So, they don't mess around with it. And there are a lot of places in the United States. Unfortunately, if you've got a site that's overseas where it's not as strict, it's a lot more difficult. And so all you can do is kind of give a heads up. And again, those sites, they're only going to affect your machine and cause you to lose a lot of material, cause you to jeopardize your own personal security. So I would advise not getting it that way. If readers wanted to read a free book, I have enough, and so do a lot of other authors, that you don't need to pirate any of our books.
Yeah. And ultimately, say instead of the author spending a lot of time going after the pirate sites, you could just take a fraction of that time and use it, say, to remind readers about what the impact is of piracy, or what it actually does. The thought of, say, your favorite authors not producing work or being able to write because they're not getting the income because piracy is affecting their income so greatly. That may be what readers need to know.
And that's one of the things I do put in the bottom of my newsletter, is I let readers know how devastating piracy can be. So please let me know, but also let others know, don't get from this site.
Yes. Yeah.
If you enjoy the stories and you want them to keep coming, it's a barter system. I give you hours and hours and hours of enjoyment, and for a very small cost.
Yeah. Yes, pirates, I think, are going to be with us for quite some time. Not the good, fun pirates.
Well, the good thing is that I have a lot of fun putting them in my books and making them walk the plank or disintegrate or die, or all this gruesome stuff happens to them.
So when we see those characters who are meeting a gruesome death, we know that it's a pirate.
They're the spammers. They're the ones that tell you that the IRS is calling, or your Social Security has been disabled, or your car insurance. All of them, they're all linked together. They're all the same type.
So our 3 tips for dealing with piracy, firstly, is to make sure you get your copyright page in all your material. Send yourself a copy, as in email yourself a copy, so you've got that added protection there with the date and timestamp. Copyright your books through copyright.gov in the US. In other countries, have a look for your copyright, the government copyright place. Most countries have them, so you can also copyright your books in your country. And then, lastly, consider whether you spend your time going after pirate sites or using some of that time to market more, and also work with your readers and just educating them about the actual real impact of not paying for your your work. Would they want you not to be writing? I know that I would want my writers to keep, my favorites to keep writing. So a couple of dollars here and there for a book is not the end of the world.
Especially when you're in the middle of a pandemic and you've already gone through watching all the movies. And it's like, okay, we are dredging the bottom of the barrel right now.
Oh, I know. Entertainment. Oh, yes. I've been reading, more than usual, definitely, because there's certainly been not much to see, with movies not being produced or released. Yeah, that's for sure. So entertainment-wise.
Get out there and support your authors.
Absolutely. Radio, well, thank you. I hope you've gotten something out of this session on piracy. And just remember that some pirates are good, but there are some of those bad ones, and we don't want your work to suffer because of that. So go be proactive and go and copyright your book so that you protect yourself and your legacy for your family going forward.
And remember, today's the day.
Yes, make it happen. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.